Hi there, my name is Hallie Cromwell, and my presentation will be on Kamiak Butte. Kamiak Butte is located on the eastern side of Washington in the Palouse area in Whitman County. Through this video and presentation, I'll show you some of the wonders of Kamiak Butte and just what the awesome location is about. First off is Kamiak Butte geology. Kamiak Butte is primarily made of two types of soil or geology. The first site is quartzite, which was deposited first by volcanoes. Quartzite is composed all of Kamiak Butte, with the flood basalts being lower on all the low plains that make up the majority of the Palouse. The quartzite is also made out of sand, which eroded together with silt. It also just doesn't hold water very well, unlike the flood basalts. Because they are such hard rock, they don't allow water to just sink into the soil like the quartzite does. Next is the climate and weather. Kamiak Butte is very unique because it has a rain shadow cast upon it from the Cascade Mountains, along with the west of the eastern side of Washington state. This rain shadow makes it so the area gets a lot less rain and precipitation during the summer months, and then a lot more during the winter months. Kamiak Butte is also greatly affected by airflow, mostly by the marine polar winds coming in from the Pacific Ocean. These come over the Cascade Mountain and then hit onto Palouse and the Kamiak Butte. Because of this airflow and the rain shadow Kamiak Butte is going under, it has a procedure where it has very dry and hot summers and then very cold and wet winters. Through this graph, you can see it perfectly. You have January and December where there's a lot more rain and it's a lot colder. Then you have July and August, there's a lot less rain and the temperature is a lot higher. Now, the biomes. And this is actually something I really think is cool about Kamiak Butte. It is not the largest natural form in the world, obviously, but it has two very differing sides, with the north side and south side being just very different from one another. The north side of Kamiak Butte is covered with a lot more vegetation, mostly from big trees like ponderosa pine. This overabundance of trees allows mycelium to blanket a lot of the soil right below it. This allows water to get trapped into the soil, allowing more and more vegetations to grow and thrive. The south side, on the other hand, does not have all these mass amount of trees. And because it doesn't have these mass amount of trees, it cannot contain soil. Because again, Kamiak Butte is comprised of quartzite soil, at least on the top majority of the area until you get to the bottom areas. And because of this quartzite soil, if it doesn't have trees with that mycelium, the water is going to just drain down and not be able to hold near the surface for plants to grow. That's why the south side you'll see a couple trees, but there's mostly grasses and wildflowers. Now, abiotic factors. One of the coolest abiotic factors, and the one I wanted to kind of talk about most, was wildfires. Kamiak Butte has faced several wildfires in the past decade, but none of them have been extremely destructive to the point that you see a lot on other parts of eastern Washington, or just Washington, like California in general. The places that do get wildfires on Kamiak Butte is the southern area yet again. Because the southern area is so much drier, the trees are just more likely to catch on fire. But this also means the north side, which is much more moist, isn't likely to catch on fire, and also doesn't allow those flames to quite reach it, which is really great for keeping those species alive. The picture here is actually one I photographed, and it is of a tree who has survived flames from a previous wildfire on Kamiak Butte. Now, the biotic factors. Like I've already talked about, the trees are a huge biotic factor behind Kamiak Butte. Their presence and abundance really determines what kind of environment is going on. The north side has a bunch of trees, and thus is a very moist, wet environment. The south side doesn't have a lot of trees and is a very dry, arid climate. And then other biotic factors are invasive species on Kamiak Butte. On our field trip that we went on, we saw apple trees that were most likely, apple was most likely thrown into Kamiak Butte, took seedlings either from the seeds from the apples or from squirrels or birds who ate the seeds and defecated the seeds out elsewhere. What was once one apple is now turned into several different trees. You also have the South African grass, which is taking over the south side. Because there's not that much water and there's no mass trees to help it, that South African grass is just taking over the entire area. You also have the animals of the butte and how they affect the areas. You have things like the bears, which eat the beetles, as seen in the stump that we saw, which was ripped apart as the bear tried to eat the beetles and maggots that was living inside this decaying tree. And you also have moose, coyotes, and more worrisome is the deer population, which is seeing just an extreme boom right now, which is lowering how much there is of other vegetation for other species to eat. And then this is the Kamiak Butte tree data sheets. So plot 1 is actually from the north side. As you can see, it has more Douglas firs, ponderosa pine from the DF and PP. All of the trees are also a little more thicker and taller. Then you have tree plot 2, which from the south side, there's less trees, only 5 plots. They're all only ponderosa pine, and they're not nearly as tall as the ones on the north side. And then I think this is my final slide, I want to do something very different, and something I kind of like to focus more on Kamiak Butte, and that is the uncertainty of Kamiak Butte and the possible reintroduction. So first, uncertainty, I've kind of talked about how the deer population is booming, and with the deer population booming, a lot of vegetation is just being eaten out until there's nothing left. This is greatly affecting other species and will only continue to affect other species and lower their populations and eventually possibly collapse the deer's populations. So I wanted to follow it up with reintroduction. In case of the Kamiak Butte falling under, we could have a reintroduction of wolves who were originally from this area and were killed out quite a while ago. If we were to see this reintroduction of wolves, deer populations could be brought back, more vegetation could increase in Kamiak Butte, the south side could become less arid, there'd be a lot more berry bushes for the moose and other species to eat. It could really help round out the environment. Those are more the positives. Of course, the negatives are a lot of farmers who are afraid their cattle are at risk from wolves. That could be a possibility, but studies have shown when there is a mass amount of prey available, which would be available through this deer, the wolves really won't have a need or want to go after that cattle. So it's definitely something to talk to farmers about, but I think with a reintroduction of wolves, Kamiak Butte could benefit greatly from this. And then thank you so much for watching my presentation. I hope you found some information interesting about Kamiak Butte. I really loved visiting and learning about this location, and it's very cool coming into Palouse, a very grassy and kind of fieldy area with just a bunch of hills of just grassland, and then coming to a butte that's full of trees and a bunch of different wildlife. It's just very cool. And then here are my sources.